Growing a business is hard, but it does not have to be. Once a week, we take a break from the hustle and bustle in business to talk about innovations and what's new in the C suite. This is the Fractional C-suite Retreat, and I'm Joseph Frost. Pull up a seat at the fire, grab a drink, smoke a cigar, and just join me as we relax, learn, and get inspired. This retreat is sponsored by your CMO, helping organizations grow with better marketing strategy. Welcome. I'm excited for today's guest. He is an avid outdoorsman, particularly loves winter sports. So the Olympics probably are on screen full time at your house. He's the father of two young kids, and that kind of drove him to his new career. He started about 4 years ago, being out on his own as a VP of sales for sales acceleration to spend more time with his family outside of the airport. So welcome to the show, Tom Hoelderle. Glad to have you here.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So let's just get right into it. I know, there's a lot going on these days. I'm curious what your take is on what C-suite leaders should be thinking about today that maybe they're not.
Okay. Well, one of the things that has happened in the sales environment, and we've been trending this way for a while, but COVID really kind of pushed it over the edge, and that is especially in B2B sales. The environment is much more difficult now than it was 5, 6 years ago. And the reason for that is that most of the buyers are working remotely. And so it's more difficult to find the right decision makers and connect with them. In years past, you might have a gatekeeper, there might be a receptionist or something like that. But if you went, and knocked on a company's door, it's much easier to find out who the key purchasing people were and who the key decision makers are. And now that world has totally changed. Along with that, buyers are much more informed now than they ever have been. And many times buyers have already done their research. They've already maybe even made up their mind before you connect with them. So the process is different. It's more about validation, adding value than it is the old, kind of the old school, prospecting and cold calling.
Yeah, it's changed quite a bit. I mean, COVID came in, and that was a fundamental shift in remote work for sure. And then now AI has come and made a fundamental shift again in kind of the buyers' understanding and access to knowledge before they even reach out. So, how do you see sales kind of adjusting to that, just as a discipline? Because it just feels like it's short circuiting the process so much.
I think with any tool, AI, and I'll be honest, I've been a little bit of a slower adopter of AI. I use AI for prospecting, for finding information about potential contacts. I haven't really gotten on board with using a lot of AI for direct outreach. And part of that is that right now it's pretty easy to spot. When people send me stuff, I can tell pretty quickly, okay, this is AI generated, and I'm quick to dismiss it. But where I see AI having the most impact right now is in the process, being able to automate tasks, being able to do that research, upload information, to your CRM, whatever. But the key is that before an organization should start adopting any of that AI functionality, first and foremost, they have to have good processes. AI is not going to save them if they have, missing processes or poor processes. AI is just going to exacerbate that. So it's really, really critical to have good processes in place and then let AI speed up those processes, make those processes automated versus, trying to bring it in, and a lot of senior leaders have made the mistake about kind of shiny object. Well, this week, this is the AI tool they have to have, and then next week it's something different, and it's because they have not given thought to how is this AI tool going to overlay their existing process.
Yeah, yeah. The tools are just tools. You gotta know how to use them.
Absolutely.
Prospecting is that area that in between sales and marketing that I think can be very misunderstood and confusing. And that's where a lot of the challenges lies between sales and marketing is should prospecting be a
marketing led function or sales led function or both, or how do each um, side kind of contribute to the overall prospecting success? What's your take on, especially in B2B, what's your take on prospecting?
Well, first of all, just to back up, I've seen many organizations where marketing and sales or business development tend to operate in silos. And that creates a lot of conflict, a lot of finger pointing, things of that nature. So first and foremost, I think it's important to have your marketing team and your sales team aligned. Um, they're basically two sides of the same coin, and they have to work together in conjunction, or there's going to be failure. So with that being said, I think that, before anybody starts prospecting, I think it's really critical to have a well dialed in value proposition, have a very specific, ideal client profile, buyer personas, and that's where marketing can help sales. Then I think it's up to sales to be able to take that information and be able to go after those targeted, type of accounts with that information that marketing provides. Many organizations I work with, one of the first questions I'll ask a sales team is, "Why should I buy from you? What makes you different?" And more often than not, they can't answer that, or they can't answer it clearly. I get answers like, "Oh, we've got great quality, we've got great people," and it's like, yeah, everybody says that. That's not really a differentiator. So having that value proposition really dialed in and being able to articulate it is so critical. That's the basis of all strategy.
Yeah, differentiation is by far the most important thing to be able to do in sales and marketing for sure. I wonder, AI seems to be a quick and easy way for people to get that value proposition developed for themselves, but we've all seen it. It's so AI-ish. I mean, it doesn't sound real. It doesn't sound like it's actually working for the client the way it should be. If a professional was in the room working it with them, either a salesperson or even a marketing person, I think together they could get better results from the AI. But I see so many companies just starting to lean on that as shortcut to getting instead of doing the work with a professional like you or a professional like us to actually come up with differentiators that are meaningful and can have more likelihood of success.
Absolutely. And I think another step that sometimes is missing is, once an organization has created their value proposition, have they validated it? I'm working with a client right now that just went through and they revamped their value prop. And so now we're doing outreach to their current, key customers and just saying, "Hey, this is how we view ourselves. Does this resonate with you? I mean, does this make sense? You're one of our top customers." And so it's interesting to see some of the feedback that I'm getting as to how that resonates. But I think a lot of organizations don't test drive and validate their value prop.
Yeah, I think that's great. We do kind of the same similar work on the front end of that value proposition by asking customers, you know, about their buyer journeys and understanding what the fears were and what the desires were and what they were actually looking for when they decided to make a purchase decision, and use those insights to inform what the meaningful value proposition is. Because you might think and find out after the fact that your value proposition is the greatest thing since sliced bread, but the clients don't agree. But you can also inform that thinking process by just getting some insights ahead of time.
Absolutely. Yep. I agree.
So, where do you see most companies struggling today with sales?
I think one of the challenges that many companies have, especially in the segments that I serve, typically the smaller to mid-sized companies, being able to scale their sales process and scale their sales teams is a challenge. Many just don't have the budget, to build it out like they would like to, and so being creative, finding areas to kind of bridge that gap between more inside, customer service, account manager types versus, depending on the industry, boots on the ground that are out, representing the company. And I think one of the things that's changing since as we talked about, the buyer's journey is different. So some companies are wrestling with the question of, do we really need boots on the ground anymore? or has the journey changed enough that we can service our customers and still have adequate lead generation, still have a full pipeline without having traditional field sales reps. So I think that's going to continue to evolve.
Yeah. I kind of feel like personally, it might not be overnight, but in the next couple of years, I think boots on the ground will be more important than
Mhm.
before because
Yeah,
there's going to be this AI fatigue, this remote fatigue, where part of it will be just lack of trust. I think trust will be degraded because we won't know what's real and what's AI, and the blending of the two is going to be so hard to distinguish one from the other that without it being in a room with somebody, you may not be able to make that trusted decision, depending on the price point of the product or service you're selling. It may become more valuable again. It might,
sure.
pendulum the other way a little bit.
Yeah. And I've seen other aspects of sales kind of, you might say, retrograde as far as using the phone more. I mean, everybody just gets pinged with emails, but I think the sales reps that are more inclined to pick up the phone and call somebody are seeing, increased levels of success because it's different. And the prospect is talking to a live human. The other thing that changed this Christmas season was many retailers went back to a hard copy catalog, versus everything being electronic. Something about that tangible product in their hand, and being able to flip through it, make notes on it as to what they want to buy. Companies had success with kind of going back to the old school printed catalogs. So
Yeah, I think it gets back to differentiation again. So if
mhm.
everybody's doing digital catalogs, you know, putting out a printed one is different, uh, just by itself, for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And we saw that during COVID. Direct mail had a phenomenal uptick in use because it still has the highest response rate, and it's something tangible. People, instead of deleting an email, people still might throw away your direct mail piece, but they still have to touch it and look at it before they throw it away. And so, once again, that's a differentiator that it has shown that maybe it's coming back around, and it's a way for sales and marketing to work together to create that awareness, create that lead gen.
So yeah, I think the AI is going to make everything more similar and less
Mm-hmm.
different. But I was reading today about AI that somebody who is really smart can use AI to get results that are really different than the most others. And it's all about learning how to interact and engineer the prompting. And some of that's been
Right.
taught already, the basics of prompting, but to really
Mhm.
understand at a fundamental level how the AI works and thinks and how to get what you want out of it. I think that's going
Yeah.
to become a skill set that people are going to realize, oh, wow, I can do that. And it doesn't take a software engineer to understand that. It just takes somebody who wants to put the time and energy in to understand the
Yeah.
tool well. A good craftsman is going to get much better results from a hammer and nail than
Hmm.
a toddler, right? So just
Absolutely.
understanding the craft and then how to maximize the tools. I think that's going to be a big differentiator. And
Yeah.
salespeople typically, haven't grown up with a whole lot of tools like this. Maybe some CRMs, but
Hmm.
what do you see as the trend there for AI adoption amongst salespeople? And are they? You mentioned yourself, you kind of haven't fully embraced it, but you've been in it at least enough. What do you see the trend is with other sales people that are around you?
I think AI will make significant progress into helping with tools like CRM. One of the barriers to CRM has been, especially for people like me, more senior salespeople, the data, the time as far as inputting data and managing your CRM. With AI, that is going to get automated, and so I think the adoption rate on CRM will increase just because it's going to be easier to use and it's going to be more intuitive. It's not going to be so, time, as far as a barrier as far as time, things like that. So I think AI can really help as far as automating some of those tasks that traditional salespeople just hate to do.
Yeah,
So I look for that to be to be good. One of the things that I do, I'm seeing the way I use AI, and I think more and more people are using it, and it may change how companies do some marketing. And that is, I use an AI tool basically as my search engine. I'm not going to Google anymore. When I want to look up, hey, how many Italian restaurants are there, within a 5 mile radius of my house? Boom, I'm going to my AI tool. And so I think what that's doing is that, companies may have to look at their website, how they're presenting information so that it's more readily picked up, by AI, versus, standard SEO type of practices. You probably can talk more on that than I can, but it's a trend I'm seeing.
Yeah, well, it's certainly a trend that's growing. The use of AI for search is exploding, and anecdotally, more and more people I talk to are telling me, "Oh, I was found in someone's AI search. That was really cool." And
Sure.
there's a little bit of kind of know-how that's starting to emerge about how to do that. I'm always a skeptic when it comes to a bunch of SEO jargon and garbage. And you're going to get a lot of
Hmm.
people over the next several years trying to sell you on how to get positioned inside the AI. And be very, very careful because there's a lot of snake oil salesmen out there.
Yeah.
But there are some fundamentals that are proven to work. There's some traditional SEO fundamentals that are like also kind of have that dual benefit. And then there's some newer kind of thinking that has emerged around AEO or GEO, um,
Hmm.
that you've got to be at a minimum omnipresent. You got to be everywhere because they're not just going to go to Google to search. But then you have to have consistency across all those different platforms in a manner that speaks to the AI, not to the algorithms. And it's a changing, the AI changes all the time, and there's really not a fixed way to do it. You used to be able to game Google by reverse engineering their algorithm, and it was legitimate.
Hmm.
It was like, a formula. It had a
Right.
right answer and a wrong answer. Well, AI is
Hmm.
not a formula. It is this splattering of information and vector databases, and people don't even understand how it works that are building these things. So
Sure.
you can't back into a way to hack the system with AI
Right.
optimization. But there are some seemingly real patterns that are emerging and some different things that people can do. And it is becoming more and more important, I think, for companies to understand that
Hmm.
because that's the future of search.
Absolutely. This may not necessarily, be directly related to sales or marketing, but just another AI comment is that since it's somewhat in its infancy, you're asking about, senior leadership and what they should be looking out for. Companies really need to be proactive right now in adopting AI policies as far as what can people run through AI, and the things like that. Because if you have, um, critical internal documents and things like that, if people are running it through AI, it's getting out of your organization. And so having an AI usage policy in place is going to be extremely critical. And you need to do that if you haven't, as a business leader, you need to do that sooner rather than later.
Yeah, agree completely. So besides AI, what other trends are really impacting sales right now?
Um, One of the things that I'm seeing, and once again, I'm more of a senior salesperson, is that the buyers are younger, so their communication styles are different. So being flexible, being able to adapt to that, being able to connect with those folks is more of a challenge. And they, people want to buy, but they don't want to be sold to. And so being able to provide information and things that adds value, that's not strictly a sales pitch, is going to be much more critical as we move forward. Feature and benefit selling is dead. You want now it's about how can you add value, how can you educate prospective buyers, how can you make them aware, and I think that's going to continue. So it's kind of a different world than what it was 10 years ago.
Yeah, that's a really interesting take. So, any examples of kind of this younger buyer and the communication preferences, how they play out
Uh,
with some of your clients?
they don't answer, as I mentioned before, sometimes using the phone can be a differentiator. Depending on the age bracket that you're trying to reach, they won't answer the phone. They may not even answer email, but they'll respond to a text.
Yeah,
So being able to communicate that
unlike my
way.
children.
Right, exactly. So understanding that and using that effectively is going to be a challenge. So once again, as a more senior salesperson, you're going to have to be flexible. The ways that you may have been used to selling have changed, and you need to adapt, or adapt, or you're going to be irrelevant. So staying on top of what the trends are, the communication styles, things of that nature are going to be very critical.
So on the other end of the spectrum, the senior end of that spectrum, it feels like there's more and more fractionals entering the marketplace. They're generally senior in their experience levels. What do you think of that trend? Like you've said you've been in it now for 4 years. What have you learned or see change in the last 4 years?
Yeah, especially, when I first started, I spent most of my career in corporate America, typically with, larger organizations. I really was not exposed to the fractional world. I'd run into a, fractional CFO here or there. But when I started this journey, I was blown away by how big this world is. And the way to work it is totally different. I mean, to build a practice in the fractional space, the networking, the tools, using LinkedIn, all that kind of stuff. I mean, that wasn't widely adopted 8, 10 years ago. So I think that the labor market is changing. And it has been for a long time. More of a free agent type of model, and so I think it's beneficial for both the fractional executives, and I think it's beneficial for the employers that instead of having to have a huge cash outlay, for a vice president of sales with 30 years of experience, they can get that same talent, for, roughly, 2/3 of the cost, especially if they don't need them there 5 days a week. And for the fractional executive, having a diverse portfolio of clients, insulates them, from a lot of the volatility that we're seeing in the marketplace right now with all the different layoffs and things like that. And I just think the relationship is a little bit cleaner, that company can bring you in for a specific role or maybe a specific project. And when that's done, you graduate it, you wrap up and you move on. And so it's easier for the company. It's easier for the fractional exec. I think it's going to continue. I think that this model will continue in many other aspects besides just executive leadership.
So we get a lot of newer fractionals that kind of explore joining your CMO as well as existing fractionals that have been around for a while. And there really are two different audiences because if you've been doing this for a bit, you kind of understand it. When you're right fresh out of corporate, it's like you're in the headlights at a point in time. What would you tell yourself 4 years ago that you wish you would have known then as a new fractional?
I wish I would have known and been in a better position to invest a little bit more heavily in my practice right out of the gate. I was kind of bootstrapping it, from the beginning, and I think I would have gained a lot of traction quicker, had I been able to invest in all, use other folks, outsource, some of my tasks and things to others in order to free me up to focus on what I do best. So that's one thing. I wish I would have maybe had a better understanding of the fractional world, before I started. There are a lot of things I just didn't know, and there may not have been any way to change that. They always say you don't know what you don't know. So this has been a great journey. It's been wild. I mean, I tell people I've learned more, in the past 5 years than the previous 30. And a lot of things I've learned in the past 5 years, I wish I would have known, 15, 20 years ago. Even in the corporate world, it would have been a game changer. So yeah, it's been a great ride.
What's one or two things that you would have invested in?
I would have invested in some of the tools, and maybe more in in marketing, as far as marketing my practice, spending more money in that arena to get things off the ground faster.
Any particular tactic for marketing that you found valuable for you?
I found having a strong presence on LinkedIn is critical, and just having a strong presence in the local business community. That was one of the challenges I had to overcome, was that in my corporate life, I was on the road. And so when I went fractional, I figured out very quickly that even though I've, been living in Minnesota now, for more than 20 years, I was not connected to the local business world. I'm still an outsider. So building those connections, doing that networking, really was a challenge at first. And, had I known I was going to go fractional, I might have been able to maybe start building some of those connections and things while I was still in the corporate world.
Yeah. Yeah, those local connections, especially if you want to end up doing business locally, is so important to foster throughout your career, not just when you become a fractional, but um, there's different ways to do that. I'm curious what you found to be some of the better ways for you, either business groups like Vistage or EO, or in Canada, there's McKay forums. There's these business groups, or then there's more traditional like chamber events, and then there's these networking groups that are popping up here and there all over. Without saying do them all, see which one works best for you, which is generally what I say to people. Do as many as you can until you find the ones you like. Have you had any specific ones that give you a really good ROI?
So when I started building out my practice, my strategy was I wanted to connect and build a bench of other fractional executives. And so, one group that was very instrumental in that was Voyager U, which happens to have started here in the Twin Cities. But just being able to quickly build that network of other fractionals, that was critical. As you mentioned, there's tons and tons of networking events. Man, if there was a way to monetize, going to networking events, we'd have it made. But yeah, and that was initially too. I felt like I was, everywhere, and then so I had to learn to kind of dial that in, focus it, not be a mile wide and an inch deep, but try to build, deeper relationships within my existing network. There's a lot of great groups like you mentioned. Vistage is always, one of the top rated groups. For somebody just starting a practice, that can be a little expensive, to get involved with some of those groups. But there's many out there, and just finding the right one can sometimes be a challenge.
So, what's the future for your practice? Where do you want to take it?
Right now, I'm just looking to continue to grow it. I've got a little bit of open time right now, so I'm looking to build a couple more clients. But yeah, I enjoy it, and I'm continuing always to learn. I mean, the learning's continuous, which is great, and just looking to take my practice to the next level.
Yeah, we're doing something at your CMO that I think is pretty unique. Is we're working with some of our CMOs that are successful in the practice, just like you are, and they want to take it to the next level, which is a firm of CMOs that are able to together go pursue a specialty of some sort, niche industry or some sort of specialization, and then the firm owner can build $1 million business that they could sell one day. And that is a big paradigm shift for the way we think about the next level for fractionals. And so the first level is get in and get a client. That's hard, right? Yeah. Then once you've been there a few years, you got 2 or 3, 4 clients at a time. You feel good. You keep doing that for a long time. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a great business. But if you want to take the next level, this idea of, can you build a firm? Can you build a business that you can exit one day in the fractional space? That's what we're doing at URCMO. Cool. We're seeing a lot of excitement around figuring out what that model looks like. It's different. It's similar, but what we found is that the business owner, the firm owner, I should say, needs to get out of actually doing the work.
Right.
And become solely focused on finding work for the other people on his or her team. And that's a shift that is really hard for somebody who loves the work to grow their firm, to give it up. It's a big mind shift. Yeah.
Well, that's the age old problem. That's one of the number one challenges that I help business owners through on the sales side is that especially more the smaller and mid size many of the owners I work with, they've been successful. They've built a business to a certain point, but every deal still comes across their desk, or in some cases maybe they still are the sales team. And being able to offload that responsibility so that they can focus on growing the organization is a key challenge. But helping, to your point, someday they may want to sell, and if they are the only ones that have the tribal knowledge, if every deal has to go across their desk, then no buyer's going to want to buy that. So helping them put the processes in place, put the tools in place, maybe even start, building out a sales team so that they actually have, sales processes and a sales pipeline that lives on regardless of what they're doing is so critical to raising that valuations, for the day when they want to exit.
Yeah. Did you go to the Frac conference?
Not this year. I have in the past, but unfortunately I couldn't make it this year.
I heard they're selling it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
it's been a while since I've talked to John. I'll have to dig into that a little bit.
Yeah. I saw an email come across like a week or two ago. Thought that's interesting. Yeah.
It's been very successful. I mean, from where it was a couple of years ago to where it's been recently, it continues to grow.
Yeah, I was there last year. Wanted to check it out, and I was excited about it. I was hoping we could be part of it next year, but now he's going to sell it, so I don't know who's going to be involved.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Well, great, Tom. It's been awesome talking to you and just getting to know you better and sharing ideas around sales and marketing and prospecting. So thank you for your time and a lot of AI conversation as well. Thank you.
My pleasure. Yeah. I appreciate being a guest on your show.
Yeah. And thanks to our listeners for tuning in, and make sure you like the show and download it. My producers always remind me to ask you that. So I appreciate that. And tune in next time for even more Fractional C-suite Retreat discussions.
And that's a wrap. There's another successful episode of the Fractional C-suite Retreat. See our show notes and more episodes at fractionalcsuiteretreat.com. This podcast is sponsored by Your CMO, helping organizations grow, save time and money with better marketing strategy and fractional execution. Visit them at yorcmo.com, yourcmo.com. Spelled wrong on purpose.